And I'm hoping that we're connecting. Hey, how are you?
I'm good.
Good. Can you hear me and see
Yes,
me? Okay.
yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
awesome. I can hear you and see you well too. Okay,
All
cool.
right.
So now that we've done the tech check, let's go ahead and get right into it. Why don't you tell everyone your name, a little
Okay.
bit about you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, and then about like your practice and how you help people.
Okay. So my full name, nobody's ever going to remember, but I'm just going to say it anyways, is Ibinye Oshibodo Anyali. But most people just call me IB. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist in California, and my specialties are women's mental health as well as couples. And in that, I focus on anxiety. So that would include
Mhm.
trauma, that would include social phobia, generalized anxiety, worries,
Yeah.
overthinking, all of that. And also,
Wow.
yeah, so I help people fall asleep and stay asleep fast. And as
Mm.
well as couples, I help them go from a place of arguing, fighting, and not being able to communicate to being able to communicate well. And you
Mhm.
can find me at theziniapractice.com. And we're going to be touching on some very difficult topics today. I do have a free download for you if you go on to my IG. It is just 5 simple ways to manage anxiety and fear, because I know that there's a lot when you're pregnant, when you just had a
Yeah.
baby. There's a lot of anxiety and fear. So I created that simple, it's a very simple guide to kind of help walk you through that process.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for creating that. And I'll make sure to link that in the description of this video to make it really easy for everybody to go to. And you can also go to just click, her name right at the top. If you
Yes.
drop down and click her name, it'll bring you right to her bio. And then the link will be in her bio as well. I know sometimes it gets tricky when you have two people on live. So just to give everybody a heads up on that. Okay, so what do you want to share about like why it's important to you to be in the field where you are helping people to manage anxiety and worry and fears as a licensed family and marriage counselor?
So anxiety is extremely crippling. It affects
Yeah,
not the way we feel, it affects our relationships, it affects our work, it affects our parenting, it affects
yeah,
everything in life. And sometimes it
yeah,
just kind of takes over everything that we're going through, and it makes it feel like you're not in control of everything. And in fact, the world is controlling you instead of you being able to be in control of the things that you want to do. So for me,
yeah,
it's important that I help women navigate the anxiety and navigate that they feel so that they can continue to reach goals that they want to reach. Because we know that when you have all goals and dreams in your mind and you're not moving
mhm.
towards them, it really does feel, it really affects your self-esteem. It affects every aspect of your life. So it's all about helping women gain access to their power again.
Yeah. Hey, Leah, Mental Healing. Thank you so much for joining us. And I just want to give a trigger warning again as we go throughout this. I'll keep saying it because I just don't want anybody to be alarmed. There are a lot of news stories where partners are speaking out on behalf of mothers who have not been able to go home with their babies. And so a lot of expecting people all around the world have seen this, and it is something that is a fear and a reality in the back of their mind that is really causing them a lot of emotional trauma. And so I really wanted to dive into that a little bit today and talk about anxiety and talk about fear and ways in which we can manage that, especially if you are a Black person going through a situation where you are expecting. In America, we are like 3 to 4 times more likely to go through certain outcomes that some of our white counterparts don't have to think about. And so I do want to fully address that and just to call it out on the table, because I do want to try to protect, right, as much of people's peace and joy as I possibly can. This is a moment that is filled with so many emotions, right, when you're expecting. And so can you kind of talk about that a little bit? Whatever you want to share about your own birth stories, because I know you're a mom as well, and then what we can do and share with expecting moms in order to help them manage during this time.
Yeah. So let me first touch on my own birth stories. I have two kids. They're now 11 and 8, almost 12. So 11-ish and 8. And
Okay.
at the time when I had our first, our son, he's almost 12 now. I'm a
Yeah.
military spouse. So that's
Mm,
also another layer. I was also very young, and I didn't really know much. Being my first baby and being so young, I didn't really know much about what to expect with
Yeah.
pregnancy, labor, with delivery. I honestly had no. I'd ask other moms, but then everybody would tell me it's going to be fine, everything's going to be great. But in terms
Yeah.
of what the process is supposed to look like, I was very uneducated about that. And so I'm not going to share like all the nitty gritty details. I don't want to traumatize anyone, but it was traumatic. And after having, you know, our first son, I really, now as a therapist, I wasn't a therapist back then, I
Yeah.
really experienced symptoms of PTSD. I really did. I would have dreams, you know, I would be terrified. I would disconnect, you know, from myself, almost like an outer body experience. I
Wow.
was having thoughts of harming my baby constantly, constantly. It was this like constant thought of just harm him, just harm him. I didn't feel a sense of connection towards him. Everything that people said, like, it's going to be this wonderful, amazing time, that wasn't it for me. And
Yeah.
I realized that with the care that I received, I had a midwife at the time, and she wasn't supportive at all. She was mainly about my weight constantly. And when I talk about aches and pains, and which now I know those are just like normal things you feel as a pregnant woman, she would
Right.
talk about I'm a baby, or she would make all these like statements, you know, demeaning statements about me all the time. And I'm like, huh. And then I took it in. I internalized it, and I was like, okay, clearly I'm too fat. Clearly I'm doing something wrong. Clearly things shouldn't hurt. Clearly my feet shouldn't be this swollen. Clearly I'm doing everything wrong. I'm gaining too much weight. Da 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 da. I'm eating all the wrong
Yeah.
things. I'm just a bad person. So I took that in.
Right.
And when it was time for labor, that was another process where I knew I was in labor because I just know my body, right? And I was told, no, you're not. So it was like every experience that I went to, always, no, that's all in your mind. That's not happening. And it was literally a fight for me to be like, no, I'm not about to have this baby in my living room. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
And upon arriving the hospital, it was the same thing. The nurse took one look at me and was like, no, you're not in labor. And I'm like, I have been laboring for over 24 hours. I think I know what labor is. No, those are just Braxton Hicks. I don't get Braxton Hicks. I only have true labor. And so it was an argument to get them to even touch me. Like, that was a whole big thing. I'm like, okay, can you just check me? Because I don't even live in this county. I drove from another county to be here. So going home is not an option right now.
It's not an option. Yeah.
Let's do this. And so they checked me and they're like, oh, she is in labor and she is dilated. No. And then passed me off to the nurse, and she was a whole nightmare, just a whole nightmare. Like, anything that I asked her for, she'd always look at me. She had this eye roll. So everything was a disaster. And they made a series of mistakes. At the time, I didn't know that they were mistakes because it was my first baby. How do I know? But it's a nightmare. And it led to all types of complications that lasted for months, physical complications that lasted for months, but the emotional complications lasted years. I mean, it was the worst trauma ever. But what I would say is, know your body. Don't be afraid to assert yourself. I know we often look at physicians or nurses or healthcare providers as like the be all and end all. Yes, they're very much educated in what they do, but you also know your body, and it's okay to put your foot down, because a lot of the things that were going on, I said, I don't think this feels right or sounds right, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be rude. I didn't want to be a burden. Really young. I'm like, I don't want to burden these very nice people. There's a whole team of medical students in there, like, watching. I don't want that to happen, but I don't want to say anything. I'm like, oh, I don't want to be rude. But I knew I don't want all these people around me. I ended up contracting an infection. Nightmare, just a nightmare. So it's okay to hurt yourself. It's okay to tell your medical provider what you want and what you do not want. And if it's difficult for you, because of course, labor and deliveries, you're in a very vulnerable state, have somebody with you. Let them know. You can write down your birth plan. Let them have a copy of your birth plan, so that nobody's pushing things on you that you do not want, right? It's okay to have a voice, and it's okay to speak up. You're not a burden to the hospital or to your medical provider. They're indeed there to serve you. And it's also okay, like, in retrospect, when I think of the midwife like constantly putting me down and calling me fat, all types of things, like I
Yeah.
should have been like, excuse me, that's very rude, and I should have changed my provider. You can change your healthcare provider whenever you
Yeah.
wish. I didn't know
Absolutely.
that at the time. I was just like, well, I guess
Hmm.
that's who I have. You can change, and that's okay. You can
Yeah.
report if you feel harassed, if you feel demeaned, if you feel disrespected. It's okay to go above their head and make a report. So all of
Yeah.
these things, I think, help give us a sense of power and control.
Yeah, I want to say hey to Tiny Sleepers, Big Dreamers, and also Little Belly Spy. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I do just want to give a trigger warning. This week is Black Maternal Mental Health Week. I am here with Ivy. She is a licensed therapist. She's fantastic. She's out in California, and she's telling us a little bit about her birth story. We're talking about this because of everything that's going on in the news right now, where partners are speaking out on behalf of their loved ones who are the mothers of their children who did not get the opportunity to leave the hospital with them and their newborn babies. So that's why we're talking about this. It is affecting a lot of people that I'm talking to who are expecting, as well as my clients as well. Just being in a state where you feel very emotionally fragile and also traumatized by what you're seeing and hearing in the news. And so I wanted to get from Ivy her birth story, her experience, some tips about what we can do, and then also how can we get out of like a negative like mental spiral, right? Because a lot of times when we start to think negative thoughts, I know especially for me during my pregnancy, I felt a lot of guilt and I felt a lot of shame. And
Yes.
I was just constantly in this guilt shame cycle in my mind. And I know that a lot of expecting moms are also, maybe in a mental like spiral because of everything that they're seeing and reading on social media and in the news. And so, what can we begin to do to kind of step outside of that cycle and really start to process and unpack what's going on with us in order to come to a healthier mental place?
So it's okay to know what's going on, and it's okay to know the statistics. But when
Yeah.
you're in that state of being pregnant or being a new mom, it is important that you don't overindulge in the negative statistics, because whatever we
Yeah.
read, that is just going to take over, and that just creates that whole anxiety spiral. So
Yeah.
it's also finding stories of success, and especially with
Mhm.
women that you know. So if you know other moms who have had a positive birth story, ask about their positive birth stories, ask about what
Mhm.
worked for them, ask them about tips that are helpful for them as well. Read books that fill you with positivity, positive affirmation.
Mhm.
I really love those. So waking up in the morning and saying, today's going to be a great day, my birth story is going to be positive, everything's going to go well, because the
Yeah.
way we think affects the way we feel, and it affects our behavior. So if I'm thinking,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, it's going to go bad, it's going to go bad, it's going to go bad, that's going to fill me with fear, and that's going to maybe lead me to freeze, which is what happened to me. I knew I had
Mhm.
certain things were going on that weren't really the best for me, but I froze, and I felt a sense of shame, like, okay, maybe I am a bad person, maybe I'm doing everything wrong, maybe I shouldn't be pregnant, maybe I'm going to be a horrible mom. So if the midwife is being mean to me, then I deserve it because I'm a horrible person anyway. So what's the point?
Mhm.
So being conscious
Yeah.
of that, finding support, it is so important. Find
Yeah.
other moms around you who are positive. And
Yes.
it's also okay to unfriend people who are negative. So if you're scrolling
Mhm.
some feed and you find yourself being triggered constantly, or you find that you're filled with fear or shame or guilt every time you're on their feed,
Mhm.
you can unfriend them, you can pause them, you can delete, whatever it is. You don't have to indulge in the things that don't bring you joy.
Yeah.
Being pregnant, that is a time when your body is creating life and your body is trying to do amazing things. All
Yeah.
activity does not belong in your mind during that period, and even shortly after you have a baby, because all
Yeah.
of your energy should be spent towards healing and growing this new baby.
Right. Right. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And I love what you said about positive affirmations and also looking at success stories. I know that as a doula, I did have a positive birth story. And like, I do feel guilty at times sharing my positive birth story because so many women didn't have the opportunity to have that story.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I don't have any place to share this great positive story where I really prepared for my birth. I hired a
Right.
doula. I got my partner on board. I labored
Yeah.
at home and had my daughter within an hour of getting to the hospital. And it was exactly what I wanted. I felt very empowered. I felt in control. And I really felt like that is where the power comes from, to
Right.
be a doula and support other, expecting families. And I want everybody to know that birth can be powerful. It can
Yeah.
be joyful. It can be calm. It can be peaceful. But at the same time, like, I'm scared to share my birth story because I feel like, who am I to share something so positive when so many people have such a different experience, you know?
Yeah. As
Yeah.
somebody who had well, my first birth experience was a nightmare. The second one
Yeah.
was, could have been a nightmare. It wasn't what I wanted, but you know what? We got through it.
Yeah.
Actually, somebody like me, those are the stories that I wish that I read, saw. All the stories that
Yeah.
I heard and I read were just stories of disaster. So I think I was almost expecting it to be a disaster, and it turned out to be a disaster. But I think
Yeah.
stories like yours will bring hope and they'll bring peace, which in that moment when you're laboring or when you're delivering, all you need is just peace. Like, you don't need more negativity. You don't need more fear. It's already a fearful
Yeah.
experience. You have to be fearful. But for a lot of us, it is a fearful experience.
Yeah. So how can people start to really unpack and process some of the fear that they may have around labor and delivery, and then that being added by, like social media and the news,
Yeah.
and maybe even people around them, right? Because sometimes our mothers and grandmothers like had a certain way that they gave birth. And so
Right.
when you present to them your birth plan to do something that's completely different, they sometimes look at you and say things like, you don't have to be a hero, and just do this or just do that. It's not a big deal. So
Right.
how can people really start to unpack and process like what's going on, and then really start to stand in their own truth and in their own goals that they have for their birth journey?
So first of all, ask yourself, if you are experiencing fear, ask yourself why. Why?
Mm,
Why are you experiencing fear, and where did that come from? Is it the stories that your mom or grandmom or aunties or whomever around you have told you about birth? Like, have they told you that
yeah.
it's supposed to be a bad experience? It's supposed to be a painful
Mm,
experience. It's supposed to be an awful experience. Now, sometimes they are speaking out of their reality, but we have to
right.
separate our reality from their reality. Like you said, you
Yes.
had a great birth experience. I didn't,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But if I speak to every woman based on my experience, they would think that birthing is the worst thing ever, which isn't
Yeah.
true. That is not a realistic thought. Birthing does not have to be bad. I know a lot of women who've had beautiful birth experiences, and that
Hmm.
actually gives us the hope. So that's one. Number two, when you have your birthing plan, you don't have to share it with everyone.
Yes.
Do not have to share it with everyone. Sometimes
Right.
we think we owe everybody an explanation. You owe your mom
Right.
and aunties and every woman in your family an explanation on how to
Hmm.
or epidural or no epidural, home or hospital, doula or no doula.
Hmm.
It's really nobody's business but you and your partner. That's
Right.
it. It's
Yes.
really nobody's business but you and your partner, because what happens is we will judge based on our past experiences. So, for example, if I give birth in the
Hmm.
hospital, I might think that's the only way to give birth. If I give
Right.
birth at home, I might think that's the best way. And so, if you present a birth plan that was different from mine, then I start to give my input and it just turns out bad. So, keep that birth
Hmm.
plan sacred. It's between you and your partner. You both know
Right.
what it is that you want to do, and you both know what's best for you, right? You know
Yes.
your body best. You know what you want to happen in your body, and nobody else
Hmm.
has the right to whatever's going on within your body. And
Yes.
find, like I said, find those positive birth stories. Like, you can even Google it, positive birth stories, so that you begin to fill your mind with positivity. Find women, you can search them online, you can read books on it, you can Google it. It's very, very important. Birthing does not have to equal fear.
Yes.
It really does not have to equal fear. It really doesn't have to equal trauma. Of course, we're not going to
Yeah.
pretend like fearful experiences cannot happen or that trauma doesn't happen. but that doesn't have to be your story. Don't assume that your story is going to be one of trauma and pain. You know, be
Yes.
assertive, or find somebody who can be assertive for you, because it is very difficult to speak up when you are in that birthing process. So find somebody
Right.
who knows your birth plan really solidly. Make sure you explain to them what it is that you want and what it is that you don't want, so that
Yeah.
they're there and they're that watchful eye in the room, so that when something is going left, they can be the one that can step in and say, no, she doesn't want that. She doesn't want that.
Yes.
Let's stop it right here, right? That's not being rude. That's being assertive. A lot of
Yes.
times we are very passive because we don't want anybody to think that we're being difficult. We don't want anybody to think that we're angry. We don't want
Yeah.
anybody to think that, you know, whatever it is, all of the stereotypes. But
Yeah.
asserting yourself. Now, I'm not saying to be aggressive. To be aggressive is when you're yelling and you're screaming and you're being disrespectful. Being assertive is you're firmly saying, this is what I want, or I don't want this. And
Yes.
it's okay. And it's also okay, by the way, if the medical practitioners in the room are upset because you've said no.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
fine. That is quite okay. Sometimes they will get upset because they sometimes have an idea of what they want. And
Mm-hmm.
if you go outside of that idea, they might be upset because now you've just kind of put, you know, a wrench in their plans. So it's
Right.
okay if people are upset. Being assertive doesn't mean everybody's going to like what you have to say.
Nope.
Not at all. But
Yep.
you have to do what's comfortable for you.
Right.
And I also would say begin to journal your feelings so that you can get them out.
Mm.
When those
Yeah.
feelings are just kind of sitting in your mind, that anxiety bubbles up. So begin to journal your feelings, or begin to talk to someone. It is okay to speak to a counselor, speak to a therapist, hire a doula. You need support during this time. Some
Yeah.
people can do it by themselves, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you really are feeling like you need someone to speak to, it is perfectly okay to speak to someone. And by the way, when you're speaking to someone, that's also your business. Like, you don't have to tell the entire world who's your
Nope.
support system. That's your
Right.
business.
Right. I love those tips. I love the fact that you said keep your birth plan to those that need to know, people on a need to know basis,
Right.
because that's very important too. Everybody doesn't have to know like your plans. You owe no one an explanation. I love too about journaling. I do think that writing out like thoughts and feelings can be really, really therapeutic and helpful during this time as well.
Yeah.
I also love what you said too about just having a good support system around you, especially in the birth room. I know that we're in a time of COVID, and so usually only one person can come into a lot of facilities with you at this time if you are a birthing person. But
Yeah.
just having like that person have a copy of your birth plan and maybe just give them the top 3 things that like no matter what have to happen. I definitely discuss that with my clients. Like if everything else on the plan, like, goes down and it's like, okay, plan B, C, D, E, and F. Like, okay, so the plan is out of the window. What are the top 3 things that absolutely cannot be disturbed, interrupted or changed no matter what? And just
Yeah.
being able to narrow it down to that top 3 because, partners are in the room and they're with you and they're feeling, everything that you're feeling and they may be, overwhelmed. And so just having them at least have the top 3 things that they know for sure that are,
Yeah.
within your wishes will help them to be able to recall and like advocate for the both of you. So just something to say there. And yeah, absolutely. Therapists are here virtually, right? To provide support and guidance. And so are we as doulas. I definitely have my clients call me, text me, email me any time of the day or night if anything should happen or come up, just to be there when, of course, midwives and OBs, doctors, offices close. There is still a lot of emotional processing, spiritual processing, right, that happen and questions that happen outside of that 10-minute appointment. And so definitely get the education and lean into the support group and build a support group for sure. Yeah. Okay, so what other thoughts do you want to share around this? I definitely want to be able to give you the last word. You've given so many great tips, but is there anything else that you want to say?
So we have to remember that right now, if you are pregnant or if you're a new mom, this is definitely a very interesting time. We're going through
Yeah.
a pandemic. There's just so much going on in the world, layers and layers and
Yeah.
layers. And right now, because we're in a pandemic and it's like a prolonged crisis, it
Yeah.
can bring up a lot of your old trauma. So if you're
Mm.
to re-experience like things in the past from the past and coming forward, that
Yeah.
is kind of normal in this type of circumstance. So just understand that. But know that it is okay to talk to someone. You don't have to be strong. You know how you need to be a strong woman. Strong women
Yes.
seek help, right? Strong
Yes.
women have emotions as well. Strong women experience anxiety, and it's okay to be strong and go and speak to someone. That actually is a strength. It's strength is saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm at my breaking point," or "I'm not at my breaking point, but I don't want to reach my breaking point. So let me speak
Yeah.
to speak to a therapist." I think sometimes people think you have to be in a crisis. You don't have to be in a crisis. You
No.
come in just to process your feelings. You can come
Yeah.
just brainstorm. You can come in just to get a listening ear, or you can come in because there's an actual crisis going on and you need help processing through that event. So
Yeah.
I do have my guide, and it's just 5 simple steps to manage anxiety and fear. A lot of my
Hmm.
clients are experiencing anxiety. Anxiety is at an all-time high. There's fear. We don't
Yes.
know what's going on right now. So if you
Yes.
just click on, the link in my bio, it'll take you right to that.
Okay.
I see clients virtually. I know you're seeing clients virtually as well. So there
Yeah.
is still support. There might be a pandemic going on, but all of your care providers and your support network, we're still here to support you virtually.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And Ivy, where can people find you, like online, in order to book with you, get more information about your services, and also one more time, let people know where they can find that download that you have for everyone about 5 ways in which they can begin to manage their anxiety.
So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at the Zinnia Practice, and Zinnia is Zinnia. And my website is also thezinniapractice.com. And if you go onto my Instagram page or to my Facebook or even to my website, it's like the first thing that you'll see. It's just a free, easy, quick download. It's just 5 ways to manage anxiety and fear. And it's very, very simple. You actually will create an actual plan to kind of help you through the process. So it's very easy. I create it just so that I like to make mental health accessible to everyone.
Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much. And just so you guys know, like I'm gonna continue and stay committed to like bringing on more therapists as well, and just sort of having these open conversations. I think therapy is like the number one underrated tool of adulthood. I definitely went to therapy for like over a year, and it made a drastic change in like my life and my overall like health and wellness. So I plan to continue to go as well. So if anybody has any questions about like how to find a therapist that's right for you, how to find a therapist if you don't have insurance and things like that, definitely DM Ivy. You can also DM me and I'll make sure to get over any questions that you guys may have afterwards. I want to thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you to Bertha Tranquilly for that thumbs up and for joining us. Thank you, Candy Vinny. I saw you joined and popped in. So thank you guys so much for joining. And Tara DeWitt, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name right, but I apologize if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Thank you so much for joining as well. So that'll conclude today. We definitely don't want to hold you guys too long, but just wanted to really hop on and just address some things that are going on and just how you can stay mentally strong and how you can unpack and where you can get support if you need it. Definitely reach out if you need to talk to anybody. This is not a time, as Ivy said, to be strong or to go it alone. You do need to build your support system. We were created to lean on each other. So definitely reach out if you need that support. Okay, so we will chat with you guys soon. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I hope this wasn't too heavy for anybody, but I hope anybody who was feeling, heavy because of everything that's going on does feel lighter and does feel like they can bring together a plan and a strategy in order to begin to feel better. All right, so we will chat with you guys soon. Thank you so much again for staying all the way to the end. We'll see you guys soon. Bye. Thank you again.
Bye.